Hello, everyone in podcast land. Welcome to the first episode of the new year, and welcome to this week's episode. Today, we'll be talking about our favorite tech from CES 2023. All right, to start off the episode, there's been a lot of stuff announced. Some of it interesting, some of it not so interesting. Just to give, a quick rundown of stuff that I found interesting, and we can get more in depth into it later on in the episode. So I guess in terms of the computing front, there was Samsung and Dell finally have their own 5K and 6K screens. Now, Apple has been the only one to have 5K and 6K screens because their operating system is the only one that needs a 5K and 6K screens. So Dell and Samsung have finally given them some competition in that space. Samsung also displayed a Flex Hybrid concept screen, which is pretty cool. One thing that's been making the news, Lenovo has a Yoga Book 9i, which is actually two 13.3-inch OLED displays. So it's essentially, if you think of a folding phone like the Samsung Fold, it's that, but in a laptop version. And there's been others in the past, but it seems like they're kind of hitting their stride with the dual-screened laptop. In terms of VR headsets, Apple's headset apparently has been delayed. It was supposed to be announced in January. Now it seems like that's pushed back to spring. HTC showed off their HTC Vive XR Elite headset. There's also some electric car news. Now, Sony and Honda partnered together and they've created a new brand called Afeela, and this is going to be launching their new EV. BMW showed off their e-ink powered color changing concept car. Now, last year there was an SUV that was color changing. Now they have a sedan, a concept sedan, which is a lot more color changing. You've probably seen that on the news. There's a Dodge Ram 1500 Revolution concept electric vehicle, and then electric vehicle out of Canada, which actually called Project Arrow. Now, it's just a concept right now, but it was designed by university students. There was a competition. There's a pretty cool story around that. But I guess that's a roundup of the stuff I found most interesting at CES. So I'm interested to hear what kind of stuff did you hear? What kind of products or stories interested you from CES?
Yeah. For me, it was a lot of the same. The Ram 1500 EV was near the top of the list, but then there was also some cool stuff. You mentioned the Lenovo like dual screen laptop. Interestingly, I thought that looked kind of weird in the press shots where it was like this little keyboard and then these two screens above it. It looked odd, but I'm seeing where they're going with that. The one product they did show as well that I really liked was their e-ink smart paper kind of tablet thing, which it's nothing new and revolutionary, but I've always been a big fan of e-ink, and I always want to see e-ink like move up to the next level, higher refresh rates and stuff like that. This doesn't really do that. It's more like the Remarkable tablet, where it's an Android-based e-ink tablet that has pen support and stuff like that, so you can write on it. Feels like writing on paper for the most part. That's cool. And then we got first hands-on with the Razer Edge, the new Razer handheld tablet. That is the first tablet to be running, and hopefully we'll go into each of these a little bit deeper in a bit, but it's running the new Qualcomm G3X gaming chip. I thought that was really cool. We got our first hands-on for that, even though it was announced a while ago and it's coming out very soon. We did get to see people actually go hands-on with it, and it actually seems kind of interesting. And then there was also the news that Google was stepping up Android Automotive, which is the native kind of Google operating system in some cars right now. So, your car, you can use Google or Android Auto, and it would just be your phone mirrored onto your car's interface and stuff like that. But then there's Android Automotive, which is its own integrated Android system into the car. Vehicles like Polestar use that, and some Volvos. And they just released a new update, and it's supposed to be a lot better. It looks a lot cooler. But yeah, those were like the main things about this CES that kind of stuck out to me as well.
Nice. I guess any of those you want to go more in depth into?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll do is the Ram 1500 EV. That one stuck out to me the most. Like you mentioned, it is only a concept, but there was a couple of things in this concept that I thought were really interesting. For one, and I don't know how useful this will be, but I remember with the Rivian, when we talked about the Rivian, we also talked about the gear tunnel in the back of the vehicle, which is like a tunnel through the behind the rear doors like went from one end of the car to the other, and you can kind of just put gear in there, and it's lockable storage essentially. This Ram truck had something interesting, kind of like that, although not as big, but it had a pass through from the front trunk all the way to the rear of the bed, from the front of the vehicle all the way to the back, where you can stick like a long piece of lumber and stuff like that all the way through the car. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know how useful it is. Like you mentioned, it's just a concept, but that is kind of cool. I also really like the headlights. I thought they were really cool. They're like a tuning fork. And I hope those make the production vehicle, because I think obviously headlights are like the first thing you see in a vehicle, and it's like a huge part of like a vehicle's personality. And I thought that was one of the coolest things on the car. Also the doors. So this I would imagine would not make production, but I definitely feel like there was some inspiration from Rolls-Royce here, even when you go into the interior, which I'll talk about in a bit. But the doors in particular are Rolls-Royce doors. So the front doors open normally, but the back doors open, outwards towards the back. It's hinged at the rear. And it's just a cool look when all the doors are open. It like every concept car, they have those little minimal seats, and you open up the doors and it looks like there's just like this big open space that you can just kind of, live in and kind of stuff like that. And this truck had a similar thing with the doors open. It looked very open and wide. And the reason why that's kind of cool is because, so it's a 4-seater essentially, this EV concept, but there's 2 additional seats behind the rear seats that are jump seats. So they just fold down with little seat belts strapped to the back, and you can kind of just fold them down and use them in a pinch. But the other cool thing is that the main rear seats are captain's chairs essentially. So they're 2 individual seats, just like you would in the front. You would have in the front, and it just looked really, really cool and really spacious. And then the final thing was the glass roof. So the glass roof was, like I said, a little bit of an inspiration from Rolls-Royce here. There's a kind of a design in the roof with LED lights, and it reminded me a little bit, actually even a cooler version of the Rolls-Royce like star pattern in the headliner. There was like LED lights that made like little shapes in the roof, but the roof is still glass. So it was cool. It was like LED lights in a glass roof. And like I said, I imagine this wouldn't make production either, but it's just like a cool thing to see in the concept. And then also, something that's not all that crazy and outside of North America, but the rear view or your side mirrors were actually cameras. And same thing with your rear view mirror. All the mirrors were cameras, which isn't illegal in North America yet, which isn't legal in North America yet, but it is in like the rest of the world. So once again, that's probably another thing that won't make it to production. But yeah, I thought this truck was overall really cool looking. And based on, the F-150 Lightning, which is kind of a little bit more boring, but still has a cool factor to it. The Rivian, which is very cool, and the Hummer and Silverado EVs, which I think are also very, very cool in terms of pickup trucks. Hummer is on a different level. But I'm curious, what did you think about this Ram truck? Do you think that we'll see it close to production? Because they say it's supposed to come out this year, or they're supposed to finish production this year, and it's supposed to come out early next year. Do you think we get a truck that looks anything like this?
I think we get a truck that looks like it, but more so from the exterior, right? Like, as you said, it's a concept car, but comparing it to, let's say, the F-150, the F-150 looks exactly like or the F-150 Lightning looks pretty much exactly like a regular F-150.
Yeah.
And the Rivian is something very futuristic looking. This pickup truck is more towards the Rivian side. It's more futuristic, as you mentioned, with the headlights. You look at the shape of the car, even the tailgate, right? It's very futuristic. So I could definitely see them from the outside going with this. Some of the stuff on the inside, like you mentioned, how the doors open, the interior of it. I don't see that necessarily coming to the production model, but I definitely see something that looks like this coming out from Ram. It's an exciting vehicle. Now, a few other things too, and this is a concept. CES is very popular for having concepts, having all this amazing technology that won't actually come to production vehicles. So a few more things that they had in the concept. Now, On the inside, there aren't any buttons. There's no, volume knobs, there's no climate control knobs. It's all just on a giant touchscreen. Uh, I definitely don't see that coming to production vehicles. People like buttons and knobs
Especially in
inside
a
of,
truck.
especially in a truck. But for a concept, it looks amazing, futuristic. So it's just all controlled on a touchscreen. And you can also remove the touchscreen and use it as a separate tablet, which is something that's pretty cool. There's a lot of AR, AI features in the vehicle also. There's an AR feature that actually allows you to measure objects outside of the truck to see if they'll fit into the truck before even like just trying to like Jenga your, or I guess I don't know, try and Tetris your stuff into your truck, which is
Mhm.
something pretty cool, something that could be pretty useful. Don't know if it's going to make it to the production model. Another feature that they had was something that they called shadow mode, which allows the truck to follow you or whoever's driving the vehicle as you're walking around the job site at a safe distance, and it uses sensors and camera technology to navigate around obstacles, which is something very cool, something very futuristic. If it could come to production models, that's I think that would be amazing. But once again, CES, they really only have to demonstrate it at the CES showroom floor, and then it doesn't have to come to a production model. But
Mhm.
that's a cool feature if they bring it to could bring it to cars. And I think another thing was they have an exterior projector so you can play movies and that sort of thing outside of the truck. That could definitely come to production models, but I'm sure it'd be like a $2,000 upgrade, right? But definitely an exciting looking vehicle. All the features I mentioned, you mentioned all the features. There's other features too, but it's a very cool concept vehicle, concept truck. Do I see 100% of it coming to production models? No, definitely
Mhm.
not. But I definitely like the idea. I like the idea of the truck and the fact that, hey, we're making an electric vehicle. We can do things we haven't done before. We can throw technology into this that hasn't been in a car, let alone a truck, right? So I like the electrification of the pickup truck market. It's pretty cool. Something I mentioned briefly, Sony and Honda have partnered together and they've created a brand called Fila. And a Sony director came out and he showed off a new concept vehicle. Now I think last year, I think it was called what, the Concept S, or I can't remember what they came out. They showed something at CES and they said we have our Sony car department now, brand new car department. And from what I remember, I was pretty skeptical. It was like, okay, yeah, it's once again CES. You show off your concept stuff. Okay, you're thinking of making a car that's cool for Sony, but do I think they're actually going to put out vehicles? At the time, I was pretty skeptical.
Mhm.
I didn't think anything was coming soon. But the fact that Sony has partnered with Honda, both Japanese companies, so maybe that's part of why they're partnering together. The fact they've partnered with Honda, who's a legacy car manufacturer, it definitely makes me, I'm not even going to say more optimistic. I definitely think something is going to come out now, right? And they've said that they're going to start taking orders in 2025. We'll see deliveries in North America in 2026. So that's pretty exciting. I mean, Honda definitely could have just come out with this electric vehicle on their own, but them partnering with Sony, allowing Sony to kind of piggyback on their manufacturing, I mean, definitely, I'm sure both parties are benefiting, but in terms of a vehicle market, it's definitely helping out Sony a lot. And BMW's e-ink powered color changing concept car. Now, last year, one thing that made the headlines, they had a SUV, I think it was their iX Flow, and it had color changing panels and it could change from black to white to gray. So all the panels on the car could change into different shades of those colors, and it made a lot of headlines. BMW has a new vehicle that's making headlines, and this is a sedan. This year, it's called the iVision D electric sports sedan, and it features a bunch of technology. A bunch of EV technology things. Like it has a AI powered virtual assistant. has a full windshield heads-up display. But what really sets this apart and why it's been making headlines is it has e-ink technology that instead of just showing shades of black and white and gray, it can change between 32 different colors. So a, a lot more colors than black, white, and gray. And it actually has 240 different e-ink segments that can all be controlled individually. So instead of, okay, the bumper is going to be one color, the hood's going to be another color, the rear bumper is going to be a different color, 240 different e-ink segments. So you could make your car all one color, or you could make this car. You can't own this car, but you could make the car all one color, or you can make each 240, or you can make each one of the 240 different segments a different color and put on like a rainbow techno colored light show, which is what they did when they brought it out onto stage, which is why it's making so many headlines. But it's uh it's something definitely that's cool to see. If you're interested, there'll be a link in the description. But yeah, I guess what are your thoughts on Sony, Honda partnering together? And have you been able to see the new e-ink colored car from BMW?
Yeah, so with the BMW car, I have seen a little bit of it, and it's one of those things where I was like, that's one of the products in CES where, like, CES has always been, you see stuff, some stuff is kind of foolish, some stuff is really futuristic, some stuff is like will never exist, but it's just cool to see. And I think
Mhm.
this one falls into that category. But the reason why, usually when you call that stuff vaporware, when someone shows off something that you'll never really see. But in this particular case, the reason why I really like it is I just want to know how this is done, how this is made, how this is worked, how this works. Because, like I mentioned before, I love e-ink. I think e-ink is great. I don't own an e-ink device right now because it's just not at the level that I want it to be. I want color e-ink. Color e-ink is very rare. Sony makes some color e-ink e-readers that are incredibly expensive. And e-ink refresh rate just isn't at the level where it can be used as like a complete substitute for a traditional LCD. But when you see this vehicle and its color changing capabilities and the fact that sure it may not have the exact sheen of automotive paint, like that glossy look that you see on a brand new car or something like that, but it still looks like car paint for the most part, at least from what I've seen. And I'm just
Mhm.
wondering, how do you pull this off? Like, this is an illusion that seems almost impossible with the technology that they're using. And you kind of hope that, their expertise in this, even though this will probably never appear in a car, can maybe push e-ink further and maybe we get better e-ink products. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that this is really cool. This is obviously them updating something that they've shown in the past. And it's just, I think we even talked about it last year a bit. It's it's just cool to see, and who knows, maybe they'll release like a flagship, $1 million car in the future where this has it integrated so you can change the color uh based on how you're feeling that day, which would be cool. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. And then the Sony Honda car. So this is an interesting one because I remember when they announced their partnership about bringing, potentially even having like PlayStation 5s integrated into Honda vehicles. And I think they even mentioned that this was potentially to compete with Tesla and, have either fully electric or just vehicles in general that can compete with that level of cool factor. And I think it was smart on Honda's part to do something like that because, when we talk about electric cars and we talk about like, the potential of an electric Civic and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's fine, but at the end of the day, and that's where we need to go. Essentially, that's the most important car that needs to come out eventually. But that doesn't get people super excited. What gets people super excited is something like the Tesla Model S Plaid that can play Cyberpunk 2077 and can go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds or something like that. And Honda, I think, would struggle to do that alone because they are a traditional car manufacturer. But if they bring in a company like Sony, who has their hands in so many different tech fields, including PlayStation and including, their concept car that they showed off in the past, and people were really excited about it, hey, why not go to them? They're not going to make that car. Go to them and say, hey, let us use all that stuff that got people super excited in the previous CES and bring it into Honda, bring PlayStation brand, bring all this stuff that people, maybe even, Sony branded audio systems and stuff like that. Let's integrate as much as possible so that Honda or this Afila brand can be as cool as possible. And, maybe when someone wants to get $150,000, EV, they'll think Afila or they'll think Honda along with Tesla and maybe along with Porsche. Whereas if they were just doing it alone, I think they would struggle to kind of get in people's mind in that kind of space. So yeah, I think it's kind of cool that they're doing that. When we'll see something concrete from them, I don't know. It still feels a little bit concept to me, like kind of like the Ram 1500 or even the color changing tech of like, I'm still in the I'll believe it when I see it kind of mindset.
They said orders 2025.
Yeah, who knows? Well, you know what? I don't know if you remember the car company Canoe.
Yes.
But I'm pretty sure those things were supposed to be out 2 years ago. Still not. So, but then again, this is Honda. They are a little bit more established, and I guess we can look at like Polestar as well. Like Polestar was a company that was like, oh yeah, Volvo, we're gonna make this new brand and it's gonna be out soon, and it actually came out. So who knows? Maybe Honda will pull this off with something cool.
So you mentioned briefly Tesla Model S Plaid. Just a quick bit of news. When they came out with the Plaid vehicles and they had the yoke steering wheel, everyone had an opinion about it.
Yeah.
We had an opinion about it. We thought it was stupid. Well, it seems like Tesla has finally caved and you can actually order just a regular steering wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You can order a round steering wheel with your new Plaid edition vehicles. And if you were someone who previously bought a Plaid and you have a yoke steering wheel and you aren't completely in love with it right now, you can actually get a $700 upgrade to change from a yoke steering wheel to a regular circular steering wheel. So just in case, I don't know, anyone was holding out and buying a Plaid because they wanted a circular steering wheel, now's your chance. You can do it. Now on to VR headsets. I think in our on our end of year wrap up 2023 prediction, I think both of us were looking forward to the VR market. Apple's headset, it seems, is going to be delayed. Now, Apple still hasn't confirmed the headset. They haven't said, oh, we're going to announce a headset in spring or January or whatever. According to Apple, there is no headset. But Ming-Chi Kuo, who's like a very notable, very accurate Apple leaker, I guess, he said that the headset has been delayed. It was originally, I guess, supposed to be announced in January, revealed in January. It looks like it's been pushed back to spring, possibly WWDC. It's going to get announced. So anyone who was interested, or I don't know, anyone who wanted to know more about the Apple headset, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But HTC has debuted a new headset, their HTC Vive XR Elite headset. It is featuring a Snapdragon XR2 chip, 110-degree field of view, has two 90 hertz 2K LCD displays. It's going to be available in February, apparently, and it's going to cost $1,099. So it's less expensive than a MetaQuest Pro. But when you compare it to, let's say, the PS5 and the PSVR 2, it costs the same price as buying a PS5 and a PSVR 2 together. But when you look at what it offers, right, it's a lot more compact, especially when you compare it to the Meta Pro, especially when you compare it to a PlayStation 5 and the PSVR 2. It's a lot more compact. It's less than half the weight of the Quest Pro. And it also has a swappable battery on the back, which offers 2 hours of battery life compared to the Quest Pro's 1 hour of battery life. And I don't think there's any sort of battery swapping capabilities there. It has AR capabilities and VR capabilities, and it's a standalone device too. When you look at the PSVR 2, you need a PlayStation 5 console in order to use this. This is a standalone device, which can also connect to PCs, which can also connect to Android phones. So this was completely under my radar. I didn't think coming into the year, I completely forgot about HTC and the fact that they made VR headsets, which is, my bad, because all the news has been Sony, it's been Meta, it's been Apple. No one's been talking about HTC, but I think this is a very exciting product, especially when you compare it to, okay, hey, you compare it to the Meta Pro, or you compare it to the PlayStation. Maybe people don't want a PlayStation. Maybe people don't want to have this giant console that they have to connect their headset to using cable, or using, it's going to be one cable, but still, this is a standalone VR product. It's lightweight, it's compact, and 2 hours is a decent amount of time to use.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big complaints about the MetaQuest Pro, how expensive it was, but also is, okay, this is supposed to be some sort of enterprise thing. You're supposed to be able to do meetings in VR, AR on it, but it only lasts 1 hour. So I don't. Have you seen much from the Vive XR Elite? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so this one is a little strange for me. Like I said, not the biggest VR person, but I was really kind of interested in the tech in the MetaQuest Pro. And the one thing about this one, yes, it's cheaper, about $400 cheaper, which is very significant. But the one thing about the MetaQuest Pro that kind of, I think, brings it to another level is one, I do think the designs are very similar, but I still think the MetaQuest Pro looks way cooler. It looks more futuristic than this. This kind of, it looks like a VR headset essentially, whereas the MetaQuest Pro looks a lot more seamless. And the reason why they can get away with that is what I think the MetaQuest Pro's best feature is the controllers that track themselves. So you don't need all the cameras in the front to track the controllers and stuff like that, which this device has. And it makes me wonder, okay, you're paying less, and I think that's great, but it's still a really expensive device that maybe won't control as well. I don't know. Maybe the typical inside out tracking is enough. It's the same thing that the PlayStation VR 2 is going to use. So maybe that's fine. But yeah, the MetaQuest Pro to me just went a step above this, but this is still kind of cool. And yeah, HTC did make the original uh Vive, and they were also working with Valve at the time. I don't know if they still are, but it's just interesting because there seems to be a lot of VR players in the game, and I don't know if VR is really growing to accommodate them, because even just recently, if we're talking about recent news, about less than a month ago, John Carmack, the guy who kind of started Oculus and shepherded Oculus, the combination of Oculus and Facebook for the last number of years, has left. He quit. He was done. He was like, I can't do this anymore. It's not really going to the direction that I want it to. But he still had nothing but good things to say about the MetaQuest Pro and the future of hardware. And I still think it's at that level where, despite Facebook and Meta's kind of meddling in the Oculus brand, I still think the talent is there and they're still making the best hardware. And I think it kind of shows with these two products. That being said, this can only be a good thing, right? More competition at different price points. This is $400 cheaper than the Quest Pro. The PlayStation VR is about $400 to $500 cheaper than this device. So now there's like real increments in like what people want to invest in terms of cost. So yeah, it's kind of cool. And like you mentioned, also a standalone device, which I think is incredibly important for the future of VR, to be untethered and stuff like that. So yeah, it's cool. But I don't know. I don't know if VR is really at the point to accommodate all these big players in the space.
Yeah, it's a good point. But I'm sure, there's going to be the PlayStation VR 2 coming out. I think Samsung's supposed to be coming out with something. Apple's eventually going to come out with their headset,
Yeah.
right? So I think right now we're really at the point where it's all right. The infrastructure for VR is being built, but there still isn't really a compelling reason to use VR or to use AR, right? There's not enough software out there. There aren't enough either games, or there isn't some sort of app where it's like, all right, I need to experience this.
Hmm.
So yeah, you're right. Like, there's a lot of players out there. There isn't really a lot to do on VR yet. So I think, yeah, it's going to be difficult for. I don't know, I feel like it's going to be difficult for companies to really make a compelling reason for VR aside from PlayStation, right? are they have a built-in reason. You're playing games in VR. That's the reason to get the VR headset.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really think we're at the point where it's like the infrastructure, the roads are being built for VR. And who knows, maybe by the end of this year, maybe next year, then we start getting a lot more compelling reasons because developers will see it's like, hey, it's not just one or two companies that have VR stuff, that have VR headsets for us. No, there's a handful of companies all producing good VR products, good VR hardware that we can really display like, hey, yeah, I had this idea, this game that I wanted to get out there. And now it's not just PlayStation and it's not just Meta. There's at least six different companies that have VR headsets, six different ways that people can get VR in their home that
Yeah.
I can design this game for.
Yeah.
Just to circle back to EVs, because I forgot to bring this up again. So Project Arrow, it's an all Canadian EV. I'm gonna not really company. It's an all Canadian electric vehicle. Now, what happened was there was a design competition held by the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, which is a Canadian association, and I think this competition was just held in Ontario actually. And what happened was different student groups got to submit designs, got to submit specifications for an electric vehicle. And Carleton University ended up winning. A group of students from Carleton University ended up winning. The APMA, the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, sourced the parts. There was some government funding involved. So there was $5 million from the federal level. There is $1.8 million from Ontario, which is the province, slash state that this took place in, and they actually made a vehicle. They took these students' design and they made a concept vehicle. Now, the concept vehicle, I think it looks pretty good, especially considering students designed this. It has an estimated range of 500 kilometers, which is about 310 miles, and it generates up to an estimated 550 horsepower, and it has a solar panel roof that can charge some of the car's, smaller systems, maybe some of the navigation stuff, the air conditioning, that sort of thing. But have you gotten a chance to see Project Arrow yet? I know it made the local news. It made CP24, which is like the Toronto news station. So that's actually how I first heard about this. I saw it on a news channel. So I don't know. I think it's pretty exciting. I don't know if there's any really all Canadian EV companies out there. I mean, this technically isn't a company, it's a contest that was put on, and some students get their 15 seconds of fame, get their name in the spotlight. But I think it's a pretty cool looking vehicle. It's pretty cool that this actually got produced. Now it's not going to be a production vehicle. It's just a concept car right now, but I don't know, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually didn't see this one, and it is interesting in terms of because really Canada has no native auto manufacturer and probably won't. But there was always the idea of Magna, which is one of the biggest producers for car parts, which is a native Canadian company that doesn't make their own vehicle but makes a majority of parts for other companies' vehicles, especially North American cars. Potentially starting their own car company, and I can imagine maybe research like this, especially with EVs being a lot simpler to manufacture than traditional combustion engines. Maybe taking that expertise into making a fully fledged, because like if you think about it, electric car companies are showing up every day. We talked about Canoe, we talked about all these companies like Rivian and stuff like that. Lucid, like it's definitely an opportunity for more people to get into the car game. But also I want to give a shout out to some really cool Canadian stuff from this year's CES. And one that stood out to me when I first saw the story, I'm like, this seems like the dumbest idea. Why would anyone do this? But then turned out to be incredibly cool. Was, I don't know if you've seen this, the self-driving stroller. So
No.
okay, well this is cool. It is a stroller, and like I said, when I first saw the headline for this, I was like, there's no way that this is even remotely useful. Like, why would you need a self-driving stroller? And then they showed the use cases, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm an idiot. This is 100% something that should have existed a long time ago. And essentially, what it is this smart stroller that you can just push like a regular stroller. But let's say you're going up a hill. Well, guess what? It's a smart stroller, so it will be just as easy to push up the hill as it was. It will assist you essentially. If you're going onto grass, it will assist you, so it's not you not have to push as hard to push the stroller. And then let's say, for example, your kid wants to get out the stroller and walk with you or be held or something like that. You can push a button, and instead of pushing the stroller with one hand and holding your kid with the other hand, you can literally just push a button and the stroller will walk itself while your kid is not in it. And there's also this cool feature where, let's say something happens, you get distracted and you stop. The stroller will automatically stop. It will notice that you stopped, and the stroller will stop as well. So it's just one of the coolest products, I think, at CES that kind of surprised me. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, to a different level, but I remember last year I gave a lot of flack to the Dell XPS. Oh man, I forgot the name, but it was
The was it the
13 plus. Yeah. It was like that laptop that had like invisible trackpad and all this stuff, and like the a different keyboard and stuff. And I remember saying like, this isn't useful. No one needed this. But then reviews started coming out and people were like, no, this laptop's actually kind of cool. I think this is up to a different level here where it's definitely cool. And I don't think anyone needs to be convinced. I even think like this is a potential product of CES kind of winner from the more bigger audience. And it reminds me of the days of like seeing like obviously this car and this stroller coming out of Canada. It reminds me of the days of like when Pebble was a thing. And we saw a lot of these really cool companies come out of Canada that were making things that people actually wanted. And were actually quite successful at the time. But there is another product I want to mention. We've talked about the handheld market a lot on the podcast and how it's kind of been exploding. And there was a product released not too long ago called the Logitech G Cloud, which got a lot of flack because it was quite expensive. It was like about $350 to $400. Wasn't a super powerful device, but it was designed to be used for game streaming. And it had really good controls. And unlike most products out there, like, we talked about the AYN devices or the Aya Neo devices, those things you're ordering from a website and an Indiegogo campaign and hopefully getting it sometime in the next 6 months. These were products that you could just go to a store and get, which was something we didn't really see much from the handheld space other than the Switch. And more importantly, definitely something we haven't seen from the handheld emulation devices, like Android emulation devices, which companies like Anbernic and Retroid, you have to order from their website, and once again, can be a little bit of a when am I going to receive this product kind of nightmare, and also quality control issues. So seeing a big company like Logitech make a device like that, although it was expensive, it was kind of interesting to see the market kind of grow and mature. Well, Razer announced a few months ago their Edge handheld. And essentially what it is it's kind of like a phone. It is a 6-inch phone/tablet that there's two versions. There's a Wi-Fi and a 5G version. And it has a Razer Kishi just on the ends of it. So it's kind of just like, okay, they took a Razer Kishi and they put a screen in the middle. And this device is also quite expensive. It starts at $400 for the Wi-Fi version. And there's a 5G version that is $600. But you can only get it from a carrier, which is kind of interesting. I don't know why they did that, but that's what they're doing. So you would think that there would be a lot of the criticism pointed at this device as we got at the Logitech G Cloud, but there's a big difference here. And the big difference is this device is using the new flagship gaming processor from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon G3X. So this is going to be hopefully a very, very powerful device, much more powerful than the Logitech G Cloud, which probably means it can emulate a lot more games, maybe even GameCube, maybe even Wii, which would be really cool to see in a handheld at this price. But then there's also a lot of really cool things. Like, for example, it has a fantastic screen. It's got an AMOLED screen, which most devices on the market don't have. It's 1080p. and 144 hertz refresh rate, which is really cool. I don't know if you're really going to use that much in game streaming, but it's still cool to see nonetheless. And yeah, the whole kind of idea is that this is going to be something that is readily available. You can go into a Best Buy and potentially pick it up. But yeah, it's one of those things where, much like the stroller, this was a product when I remember hearing about the Logitech G Cloud and this device, I was thinking, this stuff is too expensive. No one really needs this. You can get a Retroid Pocket for, $150. Why would anyone buy these? But when you see how great the screens are and when you see the specs of, okay, a flagship Qualcomm processor in this, and for a 5G version that's $600, honestly, that's like a budget phone price or a mid-range phone price. And you're getting flagship specs. To me, that's kind of like a really, really cool product. I'm kind of curious. Have you seen much of the Razer Edge or the Logitech G Cloud? And do you think there's a space in the handheld market for a $400 to $600 device that's dedicated to streaming, or do you think that's kind of foolish? Especially with the Steam Deck being existing at $399, I can do more than that.
I've seen a bit about the Logitech G Cloud, not really anything on the Razer's Edge. I think when it was first announced, I heard a little bit about it, but much like HTC, it completely, went to the back of my mind, completely forgot about it. Looking at it, it's like you said, it's a very impressive device. And it's definitely, I think there's definitely space for it in the market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, personally, I like the $400 version a lot more than the $600 version. But as we've said many times in this podcast, like gaming is moving towards streaming, definitely moving towards streaming. And this is a powerful device with an amazing screen and amazing specs. And I think it's yes, it's more expensive than a Steam Deck, and a Steam Deck is definitely a lot more capable because you can run Windows on it, right? But I think for what this device offers, I think $400 is pretty fair,
Yeah.
right? When you look at how powerful the processor is, when you look at how good this screen is, I mean, there's a lot of people that prefer gaming on handhelds, that prefer gaming on phones, whether it be Android or it's most likely Android, probably not iOS. But for someone who prefers gaming on a smaller device, on a smaller screen, right? This is amazing. Because
Yeah.
if you look at something like, okay, if you are a phone gamer, then what are you looking at? You're looking at maybe like an Asus ROG Ultimate phone, which is going to be like 2 to 3 times the price of this.
Yeah.
But you look at this device and you look at the screen, 6.8 inches, 144 hertz, AMOLED. Like that is a very nice screen to game on for $400. And I'm sure that the processor is going to be more powerful than what you can do on a phone. Even, Snapdragon, 8 Gen 2, I think they're on right now. This is going to be more powerful. It's going to be able to run games better. And you can still play Android games, PC games, Xbox games. I don't know. I think it's good that the market has this. Is this product for me? No, definitely not. But I remember before when you started talking about phones like the Asus ROG phone, we were like, who the hell wants a game on handheld, right? Like, but there's obviously a market for it,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I don't know. I think is I'm excited to see how this goes, to see how this develops, and to see when people get hands on this, to see what kind of reviews there are of it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely making a compelling case for the Razer Edge. Like I said, Wi-Fi version more so than the 5G
5G.
version.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that's the interesting thing. I would kind of want to see this in person. I want to see like the size of this device. 'Cause it's supposed to be really large, but I wonder if it can be used as like a complete phone substitute. Because if it is, it would be quite a bargain for the 5G version. If it, but I would imagine maybe it is too big to be used as a phone. It's a pretty large device. But also the cool thing is this is coming out really soon. This is coming out at the end of this month. I'm hoping, I could run into a Best Buy and see them on a display unit to see how big and how, potentially cool this device is. Because I'm with you. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the criticism that, oh, Steam Deck is cheaper, so just get the Steam Deck. because, it's also a gigantic device. And, this is also a really powerful device. So I don't know. There's room for Android emulation devices and streaming devices, especially, with one with a screen this nice. So yeah, the controls are one thing that I'm a little worried about. The joysticks do look a little small, but still, yeah, I think this is one of the cooler devices. Even though it was announced a while ago, seeing people actually get their hands on with it kind of made me a believer into, yes, the Android powered device like this can be really, really cool. And yeah, I'm hoping, in the next few weeks I can actually get one in my hands at a Best Buy and see how it feels.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point there, right? If you look at the 5G version and you compare that to an Android phone, you get a top of the line Snapdragon processor, 6.8-inch, 144 hertz display,
Mm-hmm.
8 gigabytes of RAM, two-way speakers with digital microphone, spatial audio, maybe not the best front-facing camera, but you get a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Like, this is a very compelling phone for $600,
Yeah.
right? And it's running Android too. It's not running it's not running SteamOS. So you can install Android apps.
Yep.
Essentially any app for Android you can install. If you want Facebook, if you want Instagram, if you want TikTok, you can install on this device, right? So it's I think okay, I take it back. I think maybe the wait, sorry, did you say $600?
600, yeah. So you
Or I
can
don't
get
that's
it
sorry,
cheaper.
that's a founder's edition. Sorry.
Yes, right now if you order it
Yes.
now, you get it cheaper. But then also you can get it for under $500 in the States, I think through Verizon with a plan. So yeah, but that's the one thing I think is a little bit of an issue. The fact that you can only get the 5G version through a carrier to me seems a
Yeah.
little dumb, but who knows?
And it also features a headphone jack. That's another thing I'm looking at the
Yes,
spec
and
sheet.
an SD card slot.
Yeah. So if you want a phone that has a headphone jack, Razer has you covered,
Yeah,
I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very compelling device, and I guess the more I'm looking at the specs here, it's like this wouldn't be bad.
yeah,
Especially if you look at, okay, hey, what do people use phones for nowadays? It isn't even really phone calls.
yeah.
Most of the stuff we do is through apps or through texting or that sort of thing. It's yeah, $500, $600 for a device with these specs is a pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Or if you just want, a separate tablet or something like that that you can game on, $400 is also pretty compelling too.
A great point. We don't get many small tablets anymore, right? The 6-inch, 7-inch tablet has kind of pretty much disappeared, other than the iPad Mini. This is honestly, in my opinion, I love the iPad Mini. This seems like a much cooler device overall.
hmm Yeah, and you'll definitely be able to play more games on it and do more with it too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, someone who has as someone who has a Steam Deck, is this something that you're thinking, man, maybe I should have waited and maybe not gotten the Steam Deck, or are you thinking of trading in your Steam Deck and getting this, or do you think that Steam Deck still offers more than this that you're not, there's no buyer's remorse or anything like that?
No, there's not really any buyer's remorse. I mean, there was originally, but that's kind of dissipated. I think the Steam Deck is a completely different beast altogether, and I think there's not just the Steam Deck, but the Aya Neos and the One X players and all these, PC based handhelds. I think there's a place for them right now because PC gaming has gotten so expensive. We've got these new GPUs from Nvidia and AMD, and they're like $1,000 just for a GPU. There's no more building a PC for a gaming PC for $1,000 anymore, or $800 or $700. That doesn't really exist right now. At least nothing good. So the fact that these handhelds are coming out, and yes, they're not as powerful as a gaming PC would typically be for the price, but they're an option for people to get into PC gaming at an affordable price, or at the price that you would get your previous flagship PC. And I think it's important for that. These devices, though, these Android powered, handhelds like the AYN Odin, which is super popular, and this, which I think is much cooler than the AYN Odin, or even the Retroid Pocket 3 and 3 Plus, there's definitely a place for this, and I think of these as a supplemental device to something like a Steam Deck. Like I can see myself having a Steam Deck and something like this, or and something like a Retroid Pocket, uh, because sometimes you just don't want a giant device. You want something smaller, more compact. And also, I've tried Game Pass for the first time, and I realize it's actually really good. So, having a device like this that I could play like my GameCube games on that's much smaller than the Steam Deck. And also I can, load up Fortnite on Game Pass. Yeah, I definitely think like this is a cool device that could be supplemental to the Steam Deck. And I would imagine I would probably go to a device like this more often than a Steam Deck. Kind of like the thing between the Switch and the Steam Deck. Yeah, the Steam Deck can do more and it's much more powerful. It can do everything these devices can do and more for the most part. But sometimes you just want something smaller. Sometimes you just want to throw something in your bag and go. And the Steam Deck really isn't, at the size where you can do that. And sure, you can do that with something like the Aya Neo Air or even the Aya Neo 2. But then those devices get so expensive or, less powerful to the point where it's like, is it really worth it? So yeah, I think there's definitely a place for the 200 to 400 or even 600 in this case device that is a completely different, in my opinion, market than the Steam Deck is.
Yeah, definitely. And, especially when you talk of portability, like you could essentially throw this in your pocket,
Yeah.
right? If you take the controllers off the side, you could put the screen itself, it's the size of a phone, of a larger phone, maybe like a Samsung Ultra or iPhone Pro Max or something like that. But this is a lot more portable than something like the Steam Deck is.
Yeah.
I guess anything else that you wanted to bring up for today's episode?
No, I think that was pretty much it for CES. Did you have anything else?
Uh, Nothing else for this episode. I
Mm.
just want to, once again, give a shout out to our YouTube channel. So if you're someone who likes listening to podcasts on YouTube, likes having them playing in the background, there will be a link. There will be a link in the description of this episode on YouTube. Feel free to give us a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, maybe get some notifications when we post videos there. And also for any of the stories that we talked about today, there'll be a link in the description for those stories also. I guess take it easy, everyone in podcast land.
Catch you in the next episode. Oh, and Happy New Year.